Welcome to Bible Prayers and Untold Stories, where every whisper verse is truth, and every story brings light to the soul. Let us journey through the sacred words and uncover the wisdom hidden in prayer.
There are names honored from the beginning. There are those called, chosen, recorded in the Bible. But there are also those, like the shadow at the foot of the cross, whose names are whispered in ancient walls. Who is he? A murderer? A soldier? An instrument of the empire? Or the first witness to the greatest thing the world has ever seen? His name is Longinus, the soldier who thrust his spear into the Savior's side. But in that moment, as blood and water flowed, his soul awoke. This is not just a story of an execution. It is the beginning of a conversion, a transition between darkness and light. And sometimes, the one who carries the sentence is the first to be saved. Right from the spear, the untold story of the soldier who crucified Jesus, an untold story about the price of truth and the price of faith. When the world was still dreaming in darkness, there was a soldier at the crossroads of fate. His name was Longinus, a Roman centurion. For him, light came from the torch, not from the sky, and justice was a command, not the truth. Roman camp. Longinus was oiling the blade of his spear, the lamplight reflecting a cold silver. Young soldier, respectfully, you have survived 3 uprisings and executed over 300 criminals. Longinus, abruptly, don't count. Each head is a command, and the blood always flows in the same direction. A moment, Longinus believed, rubbing his forehead. His vision was fading, his vision was blurred. A rare moment of weakness. You don't know. Your eyes are fading, little by little. Not only because of age, but because the divine truth is drawing you. The governor's palace. The sound of soldiers banging their shields. A Roman official handed Longinus the document. The commander, the Jew, Jesus of Nazareth. The Sanhedrin has decreed that you should be tried before God. You were chosen to oversee. Longinus glanced at the paper, his eyes opened swiftly. He turned and walked away. Longinus, another Jew. No one sleeps down. The garden of Gethsemane, replayed like a dream. Old moonlight, flickering torches, murmuring wind in prayer. Slow motion. Judas steps out of the darkness, approaches Jesus and kisses him. The soldiers rush in to arrest him. Jesus does not resist, just looks straight, a silent, yet piercing gaze that seems to penetrate the heart. No one had ever looked at him like that. A gaze without fear, without hatred, only gentle sympathy. As if that person saw his entire hidden past. Jesus is escorted into the courtyard of the governor's palace. Longinus stands watching from a distance. Jesus passes Longinus, not saying a word, but stops for a moment. Their eyes meet. Longinus, tugging his spear lightly, whispering in his mind, "Why don't you bow like the others?" Silence. "Because you didn't come to survive." The first cock crows. The sky is getting light. The prison gates open. Jesus is escorted out in silence. Longinus gently squeezes his spear. A strange feeling flashed across his calloused face. His eyes, red, dim, the first faint glimmer of doubt. From that moment, you were no longer just an executioner, but a witness to something beyond it. In the beginning of a miracle that was to pervade both life and death. The interrogation room was like a hell. Only the flickering light of a torch reflected the long shadows on the stone walls. The sound of iron chains rattled. Jesus was tied by the hands to the stone pillar in the middle of a room. Longinus stood at attention, his hand on the hilt of his spear. The darkness in that room was not only of stone and iron, but of hearts that had forgotten the lightness. The soldiers took out a 3-headed bull, wrapped in reed and steel spikes. A strong blow rang. The sound seemed terrible. Jesus fell down softly, without crying, without struggling. His gaze remained calm, as if he were in pain for all mankind. Longinus did not command, did not stop, just stood still. But his hand twitched, and his eyes did not leave Jesus' eyes. The captain interrogated him, laughing loudly. "Why don't you shout? Who do you think you are?" Jesus raised his head, blood dripping from his forehead. His eyes stood. There was no resentment, just sadness as silent as ancient snow. For the first time, that soldier felt he was being seen, not by a human, but by something beyond what the eyes could see. The soldier twisted the thorns, wove them into a crown, and pressed it hard on Jesus' head. Blood flowed down, soaked into his clothes, and dripped onto the stone floor. The soldier put on a purple robe, put a staff in his hand, and pretended to kneel, shouting, "Hail, King of the Jews." The laughter echoed like a demon in the catacombs. Longinus did not join in. His face began to harden, not because he despised the victim, but because he did not understand the uneasiness that was creeping into his heart. Night fell. Longinus lay in the barracks, his spear next to him. Sweat poured, his eyelids twitched slightly. He dreamed. In the dream, he stood in the middle of a white desert. The sky was blazing with fire. A pillar of light from the heavens shone straight into his heart, but he was blind. Longinus, in the dream, voice trembled. "Why can't I see? Who is calling me?" A voice echoed. The wind blew through the soul. The mysterious voice. "You have looked, but have not seen." Longinus woke up, eyes wide open in the darkness. His breathing was rapid. His eyes were panicked as if he had been seen through his soul. Jesus was brought before Pilate again, his clothes covered in blood, his head crowned with thorns. The crowd murmured. Pilate stood before the crowd, his voice helpless. Pilate, cold but sorrowful. "I find no fault in this man." Longinus looked at Pilate. For the first time, he saw a powerful man, also afraid of something unnameable. The blood dripped from Jesus' forehead. Each drop fell to the stone floor like a sacrificial bell. Longinus took a step back, his eyes averted. For the first time, he turned away, not because of fear, but because something in my heart had just broken. Jesus was escorted out of the torture chamber. Longinus was still standing, his eyes following the shadow of the purple robe dark with blood gradually disappearing in the stone corridor. A strange wind blew by. The torch went out halfway. The light flickered. The temple bell rang 3 times slowly. He did not fall because of the light. He did not fall because of the blood, but to awaken a soul that had slept in the darkness for too long. Longinus' face, his eyes were now no longer cold, but bewildered and painful. The sky was getting light, but the sunlight was gray, like the eyes of the whole city looking toward him through the silent cobblestone streets. Jesus, his head covered in blood, his shoulders carrying the heavy cross. Each step was as heavy as carrying the burden of human sin. He carried on his shoulders not only wood, but the judgments, betrayals, tears, and silence of all people. Longinus took the lead, spear ready, but head slightly bowed, as no longer indifferent. He was no longer an overseer, but a witness, something that cannot be described. Jesus fell to his knees. The heavy sound of wood hitting the ground was like a heavenly verdict. The soldiers shouted, raised their whips, but he only bowed his head. Longinus paused, turned his head slightly. At that moment, he saw blood seeping into the stone, drawing a red line like the first crack in his heart. He fell not because he was weak, but because he was breaking the invisible chains in the hearts of the strong. Mary, the mother of Jesus, rushed forward from the crowd. John held her hand, but could not stop her. Everyone moved aside. No one dared to touch that sacred scene. Mother knelt, trembling, holding her son's hand. Blood stained her clothes. Jesus, whispering, eyes on his mother. "Mother, I have come to make all things new." Longinus looked at the mother and son, and a strange feeling gripped him. He gripped his spear. His heart was pounding. A beat, not like a soldier's heart. It was not the whip, but that look, of wounded love that made him feel his heart tear, a small crack, so that the light could enter, the last thunder before the event. Longinus stepped forward. No one told him. No one ordered him. Jesus, in a pool of blood and dust, raised his head and looked straight into his eyes. Jesus, not speaking, just looking, but his eyes carried boundless forgiveness, like a bottomless sea. Longinus took a step back. It was as if a secret current had passed through his whole body. He was startled. His hand loosened his spear. His lips trembled. That look did not ask, "Why did you hit me?" It said, "I know you were hurt too." In that look, there was no condemnation, only forgiveness, and an invitation into life. Jesus cannot go any further. The soldiers heard. Longinus, in a hoarse voice, points to a Syrian standing nearby. Longinus, you, help me. Simon carries the cross instead. Jesus looks at him, not slightly, with a look of timeless gratitude. He does not need saving, but he allows others to share, so that whoever carries the cross for him will never carry it alone. The women of Jerusalem weep bitterly. Jesus turns his head. Sweat, blood, and dust cover his face. Jesus, daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me. Weep for yourselves and for your children. Longinus hears every word. He seems to be awakened from a long sleep of cruelty. Who would have thought? He who is about to die would be the only one who thinks of the lives of others. The panorama of Calvary. It is morning, but the light is cold. 3 crosses are ready. The crowd shouted, but all the voices seemed to be muffled by the heavy air. Longinus stood still, watching Jesus take his last steps. No one forced him. He walked on his own. Though his back was bent, his eyes were bloodshot. He went up the hill like a lamb. But he was not led. He offered himself of his own free will for a new covenant. Jesus knelt for the last time at the foot of the cross, looking up at the sky. The camera swung around, catching his eyes and Longinus's, meeting one last time. A look, guiding his soul. The sky was gray, the wind was howling. The soldiers pulled Jesus' arms to the wood. One held his hands, another raised his hammer. The first hammer strike. Every sound in the world seemed to stop. Longinus, standing nearby, his hand on his spear, frowned. He looked at Jesus, who did not groan, did not struggle, only closed his eyes. His lips murmured something. Each hammer broke, as if hammering not only into the flesh, but into the soul of the image. He did not resist, because he himself was the good lamb, the sacrifice. Jesus was lifted up. His thin body jerked slightly as the cross was raised. Blood flowed freely. The people screamed. The soldiers laughed. In the midst of his agony, Jesus opened his eyes, looked down at the crowd and his executioners. In a weak but clear voice, he said, Jesus, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Longinus listened. Then he looked at his hand, the hand that held the spear. A cold wind swept across his neck. A flash of lightning flashed in the distance. Who can forgive him when his blood is still in his shirt? Who can love the one who kills him? Jesus said the last words. Jesus, it is finished. Father, into your hands I commend my spirit. The sky darkened. A clap of thunder sounded. The earth shook violently. The veil of the temple was torn. Mountains fell, rocks shattered. The crowd panicked, ran. Longinus fell to his knees, clutching his chest as if someone was squeezing his heart. Longinus, whispering tremblingly, truly, this man was the Son of God. A whisper, but enough to shake the kingdom of darkness. A moment later, the soldiers received orders from the Jewish clergy to ensure that the criminals were dead and buried before the Sabbath. The soldier took a stick and broke the legs of the 2 robbers. The sound of broken bones sounded like the judgment of the unrepentant. Jesus, a soldier, turned to Longinus, waiting for instructions. Soldier, and this man, Longinus, hoarse, red eyes, dead. But we need to verify. He stepped forward. He held the spear firmly. A moment of silence. Then, gently, firmly, he stabbed Jesus in the side. From the wound in Jesus' side, a stream of blood and water flowed, like 2 streams of divine light merging. A few drops splashed into Longinus' eyes. He paused. His eyes were closed. Then they opened. His eyes clear. The gaze was like those of a new birth. Blood to redeem, water to purify, and eyes to see not only in flesh, but in soul. Longinus dropped the spear. He knelt, face down on the ground, not crying for sin, but for mercy. The sky was still overcast, but a small ray of light broke through the clouds, illuminating the face of Jesus, now dead. The crowd was silent. The wind had stopped. Longinus knelt. No words, no movement. He saw, and no one could make him return to his former self. Not the sword, but blood and light. That struck down the heart of stone of the one who had killed, and then rose again in faith. Longinus stood up. His eyes were bright. His face was serene with pain. He looked up at the cross, for the last time, as if he saw a king the world had never known. He pierced the side of the Lord. But it was he who opened his heart. The landscape of Cappadocia, barren rocky mountains, churches carved into the cliffs, small villages on the mountainside. A barefoot man, holding a wooden staff, his cloak worn out, but his eyes were bright. It was Longinus, he who wore iron armor. Now wears only a rough blanket, he who pierced life. Now sows the word of life across the dusty stone roads. Longinus stood among the poor, the children, the shepherds. He did not shout. He did not preach. Longinus, in a deep, sincere voice, I have held a spear. I have crucified him. But it was he who opened my eyes. I have not come to persuade. I have only told what I saw, and that was enough to change me forever. The listeners were silent. In their eyes, no longer a veteran, but a man who had touched the sacred, Longinus washed the feet of the sick man. He cares for a dying man, puts his hand to his forehead and prays. He who once shouted fire on the battlefield now whispers a prayer like a stream of water. His words heal not the body, but something deeper, the forgotten soul. But the eyes that follow him have begun to appear. The shadow of a Roman soldier's cloak flickers at the end of the stone path. Longinus is bound, led into a cold stone cellar, where the Roman army has now turned its back on him. The Roman general. You were the blood of Rome. Now you are a traitor. Just deny his name, and you will live. Longinus smiles. The eyes are no longer those of a captive, but of a liberated one. Longinus, gently, without challenge. I have seen him die. But it was from that death that I began to live. The hilltop is disappeared. The sky is cloudy. The wind is strong. Longinus thinks. The executioner stands behind, waiting for the sound. Longinus raised his head, his eyes closed. A faint smile passed over his lips. Longinus whispered, almost singing, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. At that moment, a strong light shone from a cavern of dark clouds, as if pressing down at the top of his head. Then the darkness swallowed up the whole space. The only sounds left were the wind and a small bell, as if from heaven. Many years later, a group of believers knelt before a simple stone tomb engraved with a spear with the word Longinus. They prayed. The man who had speared the Savior now became one of the first to preach the gospel, not because he studied the Bible, but because he had lived the moment when the truth bled before his eyes. And he believed. The light from dawn passed over Longinus. A child came up, touched the stone, and smiled. His name is not in the Roman history books, but it is engraved in the memory of the church. Like the light from a spear that once split the sky and opened the heart of a man who seemed unchangeable,